She had a conversation on Matt Bernstein's YouTube channel as well for all her past like homophobia and transphobia. She even wrote a transphobic children's book. And my take is still the same, is that I'm happy that someone is coming out against the MAGA movement and warning people and warning other women, like, do not join these movements, don't embrace conservatism, because ultimately they do not see you as an equal and they're going to treat you like shit. At the same time, this person did make a whole career for 10 years on just some of the most horrible fascist filth, and I feel like we've become so desensitized now. But when I was going back through her Twitter, she was posting about like Muslim invasions of Britain. This is back in like 2025, like mid 2025. So it's not like someone who like was slowly drifting away from the far right and then came out and exposed them. It's like someone who very abruptly did a heel turn, where 4 months after talking about how Britain is being invaded by Muslim migrants destroying the country, she's coming out against conservatism. And also, as someone who does believe in rehabilitation, I feel like leftists sometimes twist
Yeah, we started a new YouTube channel.
When I criticize Graham Plattner, they're like, well, don't you believe...
Because the old one got banned. How annoying, huh? Everyone go follow the YouTube channel.
Bing, 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 bing.
We had our beautiful Marine standing there. Bing, 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 bing.
You know, in the old days, bing, bong. You know, with the map, bing, bing, bing. Little mouth on him. Bing, bing, bing. Bing, 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 bing. Bing, bing, bing.
Ah. I added the sound effects. Hopefully they won't get too annoying, but I think they'll be fine for now.
People can be rehabilitated. And I'm like, yeah, I do think most people can be rehabilitated. That doesn't mean you have to put the person who did terrible stuff on a pedestal and make them a leader. So in Graham Plattner's case, he made a whole career out of just like killing people in Iraq and Afghanistan for like over 10
wrong
years.
YouTube. Don't use that one.
He does not deserve to be a leader in a left-wing
That's
movement.
the one that got banned.
So he can go do anything else.
I gotta do this one.
Productive. That is more productive than him sitting in a jail cell for his crimes. It doesn't mean his rehabilitation means he has to be a senator in the United States, like one of the most powerful positions in the world, and then potentially maybe be a presidential candidate one day. That's not what rehabilitation means. But the same way with Ashley St. Clair, if she is sincere and wants forgiveness and she wants rehabilitation, I don't think she has to become some sort of liberal influencer. But I do think that is the way this is going. Like, I was on her Instagram.
Yeah, the problem was that YouTube has like a very strict copyright policy, right? And they banned the other channel we had, so I had to open another one, which sucks. But that was the one they banned. Complain Eleni
just posted about attending some conference thing, and I'm just already seeing the Democrats paying her to become like some sort of spokesperson. Like, I'm seeing that right now. And I would just say that rehabilitation of people does not include making people who built careers on terrible shit be spokespeople in left-wing movements, whether that be Graham Plattner, who, let's be clear, is far, far worse than Ashley St. Clair in what he's done, but whether it be her as well. At least in this video, she is exposing how MAGA influence people online and how you don't realize that behind the scenes, everyone is coordinating the same message. And like I said,
there it is. Cool.
To people who might...
Just took a while to load up. Everyone go follow the YouTube channel. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Is worse about it. They're so much worse. Like, we played Bad Bunny, remember, during the Super Bowl, and that's what literally struck our account. Like, our channel got yeeted and deleted.
Be more politically aware of this stuff. It always seemed to be the case. This is what was going on. I still think it's interesting to talk about. So let's listen to this. It's like a 10-minute video. So I'm going to play you parts of it. I'm going to cut it down and then we'll speak about it.
In 2015, 2016, MAGA and their operators realized how important and consequential social media was for politics. This really started during the Obama years when they harnessed the internet and email campaign messaging, and then MAGA took it to the next level with things like Cambridge Analytica and coordinated messaging on sites like Twitter. Their main avenues for this influence are group chats, paid influence campaigns, and parties. Now, for the group chats, they operate with large influencers, particularly on Twitter. That is their primary mode of communication, is Twitter. And they will have these giant group chats that make influencers and individuals feel important because they are in group chats with members of the administration, people on the Trump team, in which they coordinate messaging tactics. They also have coordinated calls with these campaigns and with these politicians, so you feel that you are important. What I really want to focus on, though, is the paid campaigns, because this is able to fester through many loopholes within our own regulations and laws, because since what they're promoting is messaging or petitions or campaigns and not a service or a product, they do not have to disclose.
Good job. See, that was my idea. So then he says like epic, right? And depending if you get a legendary, and I also added a couple new tiers, guys. So yeah.
That they are paid for this on social media. So they have these Republican operatives, some of which were former White House, who build out these platforms that these right-wing influencers can log onto and see active campaigns and sign up for and get paid for promoting certain messaging.
2 epics in a day. Yeah, that's rare.
Initiatives, certain petitions.
We're at 5 now.
And this pay is typically, per click. Sometimes it's a flat rate.
Yeah, but now there's even more stuff, right? Because I added golden epics, golden legendaries, golden commons, and golden rares.
Right? But it is everything from, hey, tell your audience to call their members of Congress and vote a particular way on this bill, or, have your followers sign this petition, promote this propaganda. They are given a script, they are paid, and they post it. And the only difference is that they do not have to disclose that it's an ad, because of our current laws and regulations do not require them to do so, since it is not a good or a product. And again, they also have these group chats with members of the administration and high up officials that, especially when a scandal or controversy breaks out, all of this messaging is coordinated. Hey, here's how we respond to the files. Here's how we respond to the war. Here is how we respond to everything. All of the largest influencers that you have seen in the right wing, 99% of them are paid or compensated or having their back scratched in one way or another. I was aware of this several times in regards to Israel, where Republican companies, right-wing companies, private media companies were offered millions of dollars to promote pro-Israel messaging and just sprinkle in things. So they're also doing this very covertly when they're making these asks. They're saying, let's just sprinkle it in here and there for a larger scale, long-term influence campaign.
So while watching that just now, again, it just struck me in my mind just like how bankrupt the American political scene is. Like, I'm sure it is in the UK as well. I'm just less aware of it. But how much Americans will just want to be influencers no matter what. And they see politics as a perfectly viable thing just as much as like acting and stuff. And that's why so many of these conservatives are like failed actors. And Brett Cooper springs to mind the most, someone who was an actress who became a conservative commentator for the Daily Wire and stuff. And it's just like, obviously so much of what she was saying she didn't actually believe in. Like, I'm sure she is a terrible person who has these terrible politics, but I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of these people do not believe what they're saying. They're just doing it for a paycheck, and they're doing it to be famous. And like I was saying earlier, it reminds me of the chorus stuff, in that there were actually like people I would consider quite left-leaning, like more towards the socialist left. They were defending the chorus stuff because they're like, well, people have to make money. people have to make money, so they should be allowed to take money from shady organizations to promote like liberal politicians and liberal politics and ignore things like what Israel have done to Gaza and Iran. They should be able to do that because people have to make a living. The entitlement to that money is just so insane to me. Like, they will always defend themselves being like, well, I have to make a living. You don't have to be a paid propagandist for Israel, for the Republicans, for the Democrats. But it just shows you that so much of this stuff online is just so coordinated by all these grifters who do not give a shit about what they say, and they will just take up these positions, like I said, for clout and fame. And it's just like a perfect encapsulation of how in the influencer era capitalism completely corrupts politics, and just how so many people just have no morals at all. And although I would say this is far more prominent on the Republican side, like I said with the Cora stuff, it's pretty clear there's a lot of people on the Democrat side and the liberal side who are just as bad as these people for taking money and being propagandists for a certain political party. And also her exposing this, I think, important for leftists to understand, because a lot of people say, and this is how even Brian Tyler Cohen was justifying the Cora stuff, he's like, we don't have an alternative to the Republican dominance of the media and stuff. And I've always said, like, if you have genuine leftists, you're never going to have the same sort of media apparatus as Republicans, because to do that, you literally have to create a carbon copy organization. And that's what they've done with the Cora stuff. Because if you're a principled leftist, then you're not taking billionaire money. You're not coordinating with like politicians or rich people, because there aren't people who believe the same politics as us. The only way you can have that reach is through just organic growth, through helping each other, through collaborating, through organizing in real life. And it's always going to be an uphill struggle. Just saying like, oh, the far right have this, the conservatives have this, we need our own Joe Rogan. And also the funny part is right now, Democrats have been clamoring for a Joe Rogan of the left for the longest time. Then someone like Hassan gets insanely popular and they're trying to cancel him straight away.
Breaking news. I know, right?
Because he doesn't like Israel and stuff. But I just see a lot of...
Well, I think that was like some of the controversy, right? We should be aiming towards getting dark money out of politics. Why are we all of a sudden saying, like, come on, like, this has been a thing in politics for decades. Come on, guys.
These organizations as like money laundering.
But it, like, you're right. It was like, whoa, breaking news everywhere. And it's like, have you heard of Citizens United? Have you heard of Buckley versus Vallejo? Huh?
Ring scheme.
It's been literally since the 70s, guys.
Designed to just prop up the powerful, and everyone just
right?
tries to...
Like Buckley v. Vallejo, right? Was the catalyst that led to Citizens United, right? Because you don't have Citizens United without Buckley. And we've talked a lot about that on the stream, right? It's just more new media now, Rumble. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Get as much money as they can while they're lucrative. But as with the case with Ashley St. Clair, of course, she fell afoul of this whole grift and this whole media ecosystem because she had a child with Elon Musk, basically abandoned her, started lying about her on social media, trying to get her child taken off her. And obviously he hates trans people, so he was saying that Ashley St. Clair was trying to trans the baby child and shit like that, and just creating this massive smear campaign on Twitter. But she's exposing it on an organizational level. Of course, she got loads of misogyny. And the one thing I want to say on that angle is she got targeted by these people when she was like 18 years old. And that seems to be a common theme with the women in the far-right movements, where with a lot of the men, you often see people who are in like their mid-30s or they're adults and they get kind of turned by this money. People who might not even be conservatives in the first place get this money thrown at them and then they become these conservative influencers. With people like Ashley St. Clair and Lauren Southern, they were targeted when they were like 18 and 19 years old. And in my opinion, there's multiple reasons for that. It's just the general predatory nature of these people in terms of like trying to groom young people generally, but obviously targeting young women and wanting to have power over them. And in Lauren Southern's new book, she talks about how Andrew Tate actually assaulted her. So I want to talk about that now as well, because Lauren Southern, of course, exposed things like the trad wife grift, saying how, you know, this lifestyle is an absolute lie where you have no freedom and a man controls you. And now she's coming out of a new book where she exposes this even more. So the Times wrote an article just interviewing her. Not surprising coming from the Murdoch press. It is a puff piece. At the same time, I think it's worth reading. I helped build the manosphere and then it destroyed me. So Lauren Southern was 19 in 2015 when she rose to notoriety as a YouTuber promoting hateful opinions on immigration, feminism, and Islamization of the West. At the time, Trump was entering the political scene, and these ideas, she befriended the far-right extremist Tommy Robinson and became the female face of the manosphere, producing the viral hit video, Why I'm Not a Feminist, in early 2018. Southern distributed flyers in Robinson's hometown of Luton, calling Allah gay.
Damn, that was almost 10 years ago, guys.
Experiment. That earned her a ban from the UK. Southern continued to fall into a dark online world, exploiting it before it eventually began exploiting her. She wrote her book last summer, expressing her regret for the role she had played, but only now feels ready to talk about it. I had no understanding of the world or how it worked. There was no notion that I would ever become famous or even travel or anything like that. She had run an unsuccessful campaign to win a seat as a libertarian in Canada's 2015 election. At the time, she was also studying political science, where she was one of the few right-wing voices on campus. Midway through her degree, she dropped out and she was offered the chance to be the face of Rebel News, Canada's answer to Breitbart. Soon after, she released her video,
I forgot
Why I'm
about
Not
that.
a Feminist, in which she claims
Rebel
that feminists are
News,
unintentionally
Canada.
creating a world of reverse sexism. Reflecting on that time, Southern, now 30, says the healthy community bubble she grew up in distorted her understanding of the dangers of men. I think I projected the men in my life onto every other man in the world. I assumed other women were just making it up when they talked about all these toxic men because at the time I had never encountered them. In 2016, Trump was elected president and he even reposted some of her content, helping to boost her profile. Each video attracted more attention than the last, and the media dubbed her the original MAGA dream girl, the alt-right's most famous woman, and the first soldier in the online culture war. Same year, she published her first book, Barbarians, How the Baby Boomers, Immigration, and Islam Screwed My Generation, in which she argued that Western civilization was in decline due to the spread of left-wing ideologies. When she last spoke to The Times, though, in 2019, she denied being far-right, but she finished the interview by predicting a race war and quoting Enoch Powell. Now, with the benefit of some distance, she says she'd been young and angry, an engagement addict who was looking for approval. It was all about keeping up the excitement and chaos, but it had a short lifespan because there's no depth to it. It was an ideological lap dance. People aren't really looking for politics, they're looking for a worldview. They just want something that's pretty and hot and popular to affirm what they believe. Then she talks about a meeting with Andrew Tate in a club in 2018 where he sexually assaulted her, and she did not go public with her allegations until the eve of the release of her book, when she posted 2 chapters on Substack. And when talking about why she didn't come forward back in 2018, she said, "It wouldn't be very helpful to my cause or my career for me to become exactly what I criticized, a victim." And at the end of the interview, she says she felt locked into a mid-2010s version of herself that she doesn't recognize. Celebrities tend to get frozen at that age because the age they become famous. Well, I don't think I had a real political opinion when I was 19 years old. I was running for the Libertarian Party because I had just read Ayn Rand. My political opinions were the last thing I read. Her memoir reveals a woman trying to find a grey zone in an increasingly polarized black and white world. I've never been more uncertain about my political beliefs than today. I've traveled the world now. I've been married. I've been separated. I've been a single mother. My understanding of life is too nuanced now to fit into any political box. And just finally, she says, I went to the beach with my friend when my memoir came out. My social media was blowing up with hundreds of thousands of comments. You're a lying whore. You're this or that. Andrew Tate or Tommy Robinson are coming after you. I handed my phone to my friend and she's like, what are these people even talking about? And I realized in that moment that nothing actually affected my physical reality. I'm getting cancelled online and not a single thing about my day-to-day life changed. It's a little digital kingdom of nothingness if you can just hit the off button. So in that interview, she talks about like the trad wife stuff a bit more, but I've made a whole video about that, so I don't want to talk about that right now. But I think that's also just interesting in terms of you've seen Ashley St. Clair expose the organizational side, but the mental side in that, even saying like I didn't have a real political opinion from when I was like, 19 to when I was like 27 or something, because I got indoctrinated and groomed into this world from that age. And I just like the shock, I like the engagement. Now I'm definitely not absolving her of like anything she did, because since she's come back various times, she's still like a very, very conservative person. Yep. And I think even that last part,
so why are we sucking them off? Why are we sucking her off, right?
Like, you're a conservative,
we shouldn't be
far-right propagandist for years, and then when you're getting all this backlash online,
it's like she hasn't really changed her positions. So
you're like, well, that's not the real world. But it's like you helped in the rise of people like Andrew Tate and Tommy Robinson. And in the UK specifically, they are real. Like, they are real. They are more popular. They're growing. And you played a role in that over the last 10 years. And yeah, on the beach in Canada, you can turn off your phone and delete Twitter, and it's not real. But it is real. It's real for people.
America's nuts. D's nuts.
And what you did was real for people. The stuff she did in Europe in terms of the refugee stuff was disgusting. She helped all this propaganda with the white South African stuff as well. So these people just don't really have much accountability for themselves. And I think it's a very individualist worldview they have, is that like they go on their own political journey, and once they kind of leave it, they leave it all behind, and they don't have to atone for anything they did, because I don't think they really see it as that bad. But overall, I do think these people are important to talk about, because they both show how the online right and even the far right, how they get these women in. And even like she was saying, when she was assaulted by Tate, she couldn't come forward. She couldn't come forward because
Kensai, welcome back.
And she's completely going against all the propaganda she was espousing for the longest time. Like, she's saying that women are liars, women aren't victims, all this stuff about men assaulting people, that doesn't exist. And then that happens to her, she has nowhere to turn. So I'm not surprised with that experience, and also her terrible abusive husband, she comes out the other side saying like, this conservative movement just absolutely hates women, and women can't actually be a part of this. And it sucks that people who come from a fairly privileged upbringing like herself, you have to actually go through that to come out the other side and realize that these people didn't care for you, and they were just grooming you essentially. But I think it's a good warning sign for anyone. Like, if you know any women who are conservative and they're teenage conservatives, you have to like share these stories with them, show them that even if you get into these movements, become famous, become successful, become rich, even like mingling with some of the most powerful people in the world, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, you'll never actually be seen as an equal by these people ever. And all this propaganda you're doing, while it might excite you, you might like the fame, you might like the money, it's definitely damaging yourself, as we see with the things like with Andrew Tate and others. You're actually destroying the culture to make sure you are less safe in the future. And if you have children like these people do now, they will be less safe in the future. And that is also one part I want to note. They both became anti-conservative when they had children, which I think is actually really interesting, considering how much they love to talk about the conservatives' family values. But when they have children, they realize, oh shit, like, the world I'm creating for my child is actually really scary, so I don't want to be a part of that anymore. But yeah, these are obviously two of the more
too little too late, guys,
female far-right figures, and I just think it further shows there just isn't a place for these people in the conservative movement. I just think the American individualist hustle mindset just ensures that we're going to have more of these people. Like, it doesn't matter how many Lauren Southerns and Ashley St. Clairs leave MAGA and start saying like, don't do this because it's going to be bad for women. There'll be 1,000 women lining up to be the next Lauren Southern and Ashley St. Clair because of the things I mentioned, because of them wanting to be an influencer, regardless of what it's in, because they want to be famous, because they want to get on social media, and just because of this like new social media era where everyone just wants to be a YouTuber, TikToker, and everything like that. There's just never going to be a shortage of this, no matter how many horror stories we get, and that's the depressing thing. But that's it for the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.
We know that.
Affairs magazine. We are privileged to have returning to the program today Mouin Rabbani. He is a researcher and analyst on the Middle East. His new forthcoming book is Gaza Apocalypse, a Genocide Diary, available already for pre-order from Or Books. And I was honored to get to, in fact, blurb this book. And it's a quote from me on the back that says that Mouin Rabbani is always wise, thoughtful, and morally clear, which is something that I deeply believe, and I'm very excited for this book. I recommend everyone check out his work. Mouin is really one of our best analysts of Middle East politics, and so we are delighted to have him back on the program. Mouin, welcome.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you for your kind words of introduction, and particularly for your generous endorsement of my forthcoming book. And it's a real pleasure to be with you again.
Well, I have mentioned before to you that you are the person I turn to when I need sanity and calm.
You've come to the wrong place.
And, well, I just want to let's begin with perhaps the inverse of sanity and calm by just reading to you from the Truth Social feed of the President of the United States. Latest from this would be from today, is I just had excellent conversations with President of Lebanon and Prime Minister of Israel. They've agreed that in order to achieve peace, in all caps, between their countries, capital C, they will formally begin a 10-day ceasefire, all caps. The two countries met for the first time in 34 years in Washington, D.C. with our great Secretary of State, once again capitalized, Marco Rubio. I've directed Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Rubio, together with the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Raisin Kane, to work with Israel and Lebanon to achieve a lasting peace. It has been my honor to solve 9 wars across the world, and this will be my 10th, so let's get it done. President Donald J. Trump.
In Canada, I didn't know that. That's cool. I had poutine for the first time like a few years ago, and it's delicious.
Your reaction to this, Muin Ravani?
Well, you also recall that yesterday he explained that no one had ever stopped a war before.
Nobody, guys. Out of all the wars, they never stopped them. They just kept going and going.
The problem with
Or they ended because everyone died.
your question, Nathan, is that one can't apply rational analysis to anything the way you would to any other government or country or even previous U.S. Governments. With the current leadership in the White House, they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. They have absolutely no idea what their own objectives are. And somehow it's left to us to figure out not only what they're doing, but where they're going, in a context in which they routinely contradict themselves, go in every conceivable direction. So that's made the work of people like you and me extraordinarily difficult. But having said that, if we take this specific issue of Lebanon, let's look at the background. As you will recall, when Pakistan announced that a ceasefire had been achieved between the United States and Iran, the prime minister or the president of Pakistan, I can't recall which, in his statement about that ceasefire, explicitly stated that it would apply to all theaters and explicitly mentioned Lebanon in that context. The Israelis then said,
Nope.
Lebanon is left outside it, that they would not respect any ceasefire with Lebanon. And the following day, launched an aerial massacre in multiple neighborhoods of the Lebanese capital, Beirut, the most intensive bombing of that city since Israel's 1982 invasion. And then you had the initial round of talks between the United States and Iran in Islamabad, which the U.S. Broke off after 21 hours and departed for reasons which remain unclear. And now there's going to be a second round of U.S.-Iranian talks. And the Iranians have made absolutely clear that there will be no second round of talks unless there is a ceasefire in Lebanon. The U.S. is obviously very keen not to present the ceasefire as an Iranian achievement. Israel is even more insistent that this not be seen as kind of a concession to Iran. So we now have this whole theatrical performance where the United States has managed to mediate a ceasefire between the Lebanese government and Israel, and it's supposed to last for 10 days. In other words, its continuation is contingent on progress in U.S.-Iranian negotiations. But that's the general background to this. Now, of course, what remains unclear is how Israel is going to define ceasefire. Does ceasefire mean...
The crucial question with
Yes,
Israel.
yes. I mean, the ceasefire...
Yeah, like traditionally a ceasefire meant this. Israel doesn't care about what this means, right? They will they only care about like you stopping attacks on them.
Fire mean you stop shooting?
Yeah.
Or is Israel going to
Thank
transform
you.
this into an Israeli ceasefire where only the
So
other
stupid.
side is committed to stop shooting? And more importantly, the Israelis see...
Wow, this guy has a Union of Soviet Socialist Republics sign in the back.
renewed
crazy.
hostilities in Lebanon as their best bet for reigniting the war with Iran, which I think is by now clear the U.S. is seeking an exit from.
I want to ask you about the Israel-U.S. relationship in all of this, because I think there is a dispute, even among critics of the Trump administration and of U.S. foreign policy generally, over the degree to which Israel determines U.S. policy versus the U.S. Being able to control Israel. I'll quote something that you posted recently. You said, Israel's a gangster state because the United States runs the crime syndicate. Without Washington, Israel is nothing. And someone in the comments replied, you got that backwards. And indeed, there are a lot of people who say, you know, Israel pushed the United States into this war. This is Israel's war. The U.S. was dragged in through the influence of Netanyahu, which I'd like to hear your perspective on the degree to which Israel controls U.S. policy, influences U.S. policy versus is under the thumb of its benefactor.
Well, I think I've answered that question in the first part of our discussion. A ceasefire with Lebanon is absolutely not in Israel's interest, and in fact now also presents a political danger to the Israeli prime minister, who is heading into elections. But the phone call came from Washington. There's going to be a ceasefire, and Israel has no choice but to do as it's told. Because if there's
ceasefire,
one thing
Josephus,
that we didn't already
what's
know,
that?
We should have known it, but that we learned very clearly since late 2023. It's how extraordinarily dependent Israel is on the United States militarily, politically, diplomatically, and so on. And now we actually have U.S. forces stationed in Israel to defend it from Iranian missiles and so on. Having said that, there are different levels of proxy relationships, and and Israel, of course, has over the decades managed to build up a very powerful and influential lobby within Washington and the United States generally. I mean, look at the repression of campus protests. If you look at the U.S. media, U.S. journalists have more freedom to criticize the American government than they do to criticize or scrutinize the Israeli government.
Jeez,
and in the
that's
particular
100.
case of the war with Iran, as many people have noted, this is something Israel has been agitating for decades, at least since the turn of the century, and it has failed to persuade the U.S. to either launch or support such a war with Democratic as well as Republican administrations. But in Trump, they found their mark. I mean, we're talking about someone who is extraordinarily vacuous, ignorant, knows nothing about diplomacy, knows nothing about the Middle East, knows nothing about strategy or warfare. And they were able to successfully present him with a fantastical war plan that he would achieve a decisive victory within 72 to 96 hours. And because the US government is composed exclusively of yes men and yes women, you probably saw the reporting in the New York Times that when Netanyahu made his presentation arguing for this war in the White House on February 11th, every cabinet member except for Pete Hegseth said this was a farcical idea, but they ended up signing off on it anyway. And so the broader point I'm trying to make is tails don't wag dogs. Dogs wag tails. And that's certainly true in the case of
Did you
the
hear
US
that, guys?
relationship. Nevertheless, Israel does have more
news to me
in Washington than perhaps any other U.S. proxy or ally.
You mentioned there the degree
Zionist
to which
is extremely
it's
pragmatic.
kind of shocking that in the United States the our ability to criticize Israel is less than our ability to criticize the United States government. I couldn't help but think back to my own firing from The Guardian as a political columnist, which occurred over a tweet about Israel, even though I'd criticized the U.S. government over and over for a very long time. I want to read a little quote from you, another quote from you, which is, I think, may sound provocative at first, but I think you're probably right. You say, whatever one thinks of Zionism during its formative years, it is today indisputably a totalitarian movement. Anyone of any background who steps out of line anywhere on the planet is immediately defamed, delegitimized, and demonized. In unison, an army of flunkies will go after you, your work, your family, even your citizenship. Campaigns are launched to get you silenced, fired, imprisoned, and deported. Whether you're an individual, institution, or even a country, everyone is expected to boycott and sanction you if you express even the slightest criticism or dissent. But if you call for Israel to be boycotted and held accountable for its actions, these suddenly become the most illegitimate tactics ever conceived. Could you expand a little bit on what you mean by a totalitarian movement there?
Well, what I'm speaking about here is a movement that tolerates absolutely no questions, absolutely no scrutiny, criticism, condemnation. And if you step out of line,
it's very authoritarian, in other words, right?
They will do everything within their power to ensure that there are consequences. I mean, we're talking about elementary school teachers who are being fired. We're talking about a full-scale assault on academia. We are talking about laws that are being passed left and right to make criticism of Israel a hate crime. You know, you look at all the criticism there has been of the U.S. with respect to the war against Iran, compared to criticism of Israel with respect to the Gaza genocide.
Good job, Brigel.
Much greater tolerance of criticism and condemnation of the U.S. by the U.S. government than there has been.
That's the sixth epic
by the U.S. government. And here I'm referring both to the Biden administration and to the Trump administration. I mean, for God's sake, we have a case of a student at Tufts University who was kidnapped by plain-clothed agents, put into an unmarked car, and sent to a prison camp in Louisiana because she had written an opinion piece in a student newspaper no one has ever heard of. That's the extent to which this is
For real.
going now. You know, people are constantly being nominated for deportation, even for denaturalization.
I got a Steve.
I mean,
you
look
did.
at the current mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani. Ultimately, the indictment against him was not that he was a democratic socialist, not that he was a Muslim, although that played a big part, but that he was critical of Israel. That, you know, and this is and we're talking
Remember
about
that, guys?
municipal election in a U.S. city. Now you have, of course, this new law in France that apparently has been defeated in the National Assembly this morning, but it literally sought to make criticism of Israel, any criticism of Israel, a criminal offense punishable by imprisonment. I can't think of any similar case outside of a totalitarian political system.
A rainbow trout fingerling. What the hell kind of fish is that?
In contemporary history. And it's all being done, mind you,
Baby colors, baby fish.
The governments of the individual states to immunize themselves from criticism, but it's being done on behalf of a foreign state.
It's extraordinary. We had in New Orleans a couple of months ago the Combating Anti-Semitism Conference of Mayors, where they brought mayors from all around the country, and they were trying to get them to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition of anti-Semitism. which is a special crafted definition of anti-Semitism that instead of the usual definition of anti-Semitism, which is anti-Jewish bigotry, expands that definition to include calling Israel racist or comparing Israeli actions to the actions of...
no, you're the racist for calling Israel racist. Wow.
The Nazi regime in
You're bigoted for calling Israel bigoted.
Germany, and they've been trying to get as many entities as possible to codify in local statutes, in university, corporate bylaws, everywhere, to codify this special definition of anti-Semitism.
I think it's noteworthy that the person who actually formulated that definition, his name escapes me for the moment, but even he said this was not intended as a definition of anti-Semitism, and he has disavowed it. But nevertheless, it's now being codified into law, left and right, and people are paying consequences. I mean, look at this, for example, this comparing Israel to Nazi Germany. Go read an Israeli newspaper. Israelis are denouncing each other as Nazis from sunrise till sundown. You now have this debate in Israel about whether ultra-Orthodox religious Jews should be conscripted into the Israeli military or not. And without getting into the details, this is being denounced as a Gestapo initiative that can only be done by a Nazi state seeking to destroy Judaism and all the rest of it. Okay, is anyone going to go to prison for that? Or is it only people who criticize Israeli conduct vis-a-vis, or an Israeli policy, an Israeli genocide vis-a-vis?
Yeah, that's a really good point, right?
The Palestinians and elsewhere in the...
It can only be it's just a way of controlling people, right? And Israel's the prime example of that in terms of controlling people through interstate relations, through coercion, through getting other states to pass anti-freedom legislation, anti-free speech legislation. What?
We've been discussing the climate of extreme repression and the levels of hostility. We've covered a lot of other aspects of this, from the sort of Israeli troll farms on social media to Canary Mission, trying to expose and shame and dox anyone deemed an anti-Semite. But I actually want to ask you about the way in which the climate has somewhat seemingly changed for the better. I mean, one of the striking things about the last few years is that it hasn't worked. I mean, we've seen a massive shift in public opinion, and it kind of shocked me when I saw mainstream candidates for office, for Democratic Party office, like Graham Plattner, Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan, using their rejection of AIPAC as a badge of honor. Now previously, fealty to AIPAC was kind of a prerequisite for any
you couldn't do
Democratic
anything
Party
without
politics. I mean, now people are seeing it as a scarlet letter. Even Cory Booker, one of the most pro-Israel Democrats in the Senate, recently, I mean, he did it in a very cowardly way, but he said, I'm no longer going to take donations from single issue groups because AIPAC was an albatross around his neck. So could you perhaps comment on that extraordinary shift?
You're exactly right. And what we're talking about here is not a change or a shift, but I'm convinced a definitive and irreversible transformation. Israel has lost the public square in a way that it will never be able to reclaim it. And that, in turn, I think, also helps explain the intensification of this totalitarian campaign to stamp out any discussion, any debate, any criticism, any scrutiny, any condemnation, because they've lost the public debate. So if you've lost the public debate, what's your next best option? Well, to make sure there isn't any debate. And what I find so interesting about these politicians, as you noted, it wasn't so long ago that if you wanted to have a political career in the United States, whether as a senator or a municipal dog catcher, you first needed to ensure that you weren't opposed by AIPAC, and ideally you would be supported by AIPAC. It's now gotten to the point where people are publicly disavowing AIPAC, and as I've noted elsewhere, what interests me so much about this phenomenon is not so much the principled politicians who are rejecting AIPAC and its money for the right reasons. I think the much more significant ones are the opportunists who would like nothing better than to take money from AIPAC, but realize it could end up destroying their political career. That's extraordinarily significant.
I mean, unfortunately, well, we have seen it translate into policy a little bit, because we've seen more and more Democrats in Congress sign on to efforts to stop arms transfers to Israel. But I mean, I think there's still kind of a gap between where the politicians are and where the base is on this.
And particularly the leadership of the parties, and the Democratic Party in particular. I mean, you have Chuck Schumer, who openly says that he considers it his sacred duty to be Israel's guardian in the U.S. Congress. And things aren't going to change overnight. I mean, political change often always lags behind changes in public opinion, and particularly when you're dealing in a plutocracy, that change is going to come more slowly. But look, for example, at the recent mayoral election in New York. I mean, Zohran Mamdani's opponents tried to make this the Tel Aviv primary, and they succeeded in doing so. But they also ended up losing for precisely that reason. So there are, I think, very significant and very encouraging signs. But of course, these things aren't going to happen by themselves. We all still have a lot of work to do. We all still have a lot of extraordinarily hard and difficult work to do. We are probably going to lose more often than we succeed, at least in the short term. But at the end of the day, I think we are dealing with an irreversible trend unless we allow it to take us down.
That's certainly a positive development, because I know that a lot of people, as they look out on, as they see just the relentlessness of the horror, as they saw the Gaza genocide unfold, and now they've seen all of these atrocities against Iranian civilians and everything going on in Lebanon. It does feel. I mean, it does feel like it must have felt during the Vietnam War, where it drags on and on and on, and you just see. But sort of slowly, something is happening that maybe we can see. Maybe we can see a little light in the future.
Yes, and as I pointed out recently, I think it's important to recognize that change comes incrementally, and it can come incrementally for a very long time before it begins to happen exponentially. And given both how recent many of these changes are, and the extraordinary commitment, shall we say, of the forces arrayed against us, it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be rapid. But if you look at the situation in the Middle East, yes, the price that has been paid has been extraordinary. Genocide in Gaza, what people are increasingly characterizing as a genocide in Lebanon, death and destruction throughout Iran, and massive destruction elsewhere in the region, particularly in the Arab states on the Persian Gulf. Now, a global economic crisis, and all the rest of it. But at the same time, I think as a number of analysts have pointed out, this is also, in many respects, Washington's Suez moment, where precisely at a time when it launched a war to confirm and consolidate its status as a leading global power, it came up against the limits of its capacities and capabilities. And future historians, I believe, will look back on this moment as the one that marked the turning point, that marked the definitive beginning of U.S. imperial decline. Similarly, If you look at Israel, for Israel, the war against Iran was supposed to be the final act, the act that would confirm and consolidate its status as the unchallenged regional hegemon.
It didn't do that.
Nevertheless, we now appear to see Israel coming up very clearly against the limits of its capacity to project unchallenged power throughout the Middle East.
That gets me to...
Take the L, Israel.
A question I wanted to ask you about the gap between the Trump administration's presentation of what has occurred over the last month or so and what has actually occurred. I mean, you have said that we are in the, quote, death throes of a failed war. Of course, the Trump administration every day comes out, as every party in every war does, and says, you know, we're winning, we're doing great, we're achieving all of our objectives, it's going to be a little while longer. Could you talk about...
with success.
Could you explain what the administration's propaganda world version of this war is, and how we should actually understand what has just happened?
Well, this was, of course, a joint U.S.-Israeli war. But if we take the U.S. and you look at the statements that were made at the outset by the U.S. and the demands that were made of Iran, but again, with the caveat that it's very difficult to apply any rational analytical framework to Washington these days. But nevertheless, the U.S. was lauding the prospect of regime change. It called on the Iranian people to rise up and overthrow their leadership. It demanded the total surrender
of the
Iranian leadership. It demanded the complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program. In other words, Iran was also required to surrender the peaceful elements of its nuclear program, including those conducted as part of its internationally recognized rights under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Program. It was supposed to surrender its ballistic missile program, and anything that it refused to forfeit would be destroyed. We're now, 6 or 7 weeks later, and not only have, of course, there have been important tactical successes, but none of them resulted in the strategic transformations that had been anticipated by Washington. And if I could just backtrack a bit to this February meeting at the White House, despite their skepticism, they were so convinced, the Americans and the Israelis, that the plan would be successful, that Iran would be paralyzed, that Iran would be incapable of significant retaliation, and most of all, that Iran would be either unable or unwilling to establish its control over the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf, that there was no contingency planning for any of these scenarios. There was no plan B. And so now, 6 or 7 weeks later, if you look at the statements coming out of Washington and the agenda of these upcoming negotiations with the Iranians, sure, they're still talking about, dismantling its nuclear program and so on. But it is primarily focused on navigation of the Strait of Hormuz. In other words, the U.S., as a result of its failures, has been forced to divert its attention to seeking to address the consequences of its war rather than the objectives it established for this war at the outset. And that, I think, is a big deal.
I think I realized that everything had gone south at the moment where I saw the headline, "Opening the Strait has become the crucial issue of the war." And I suppose they try to get us to forget that was not an issue before the war, and that amounts to now waging war in order to, as you say, undo the catastrophe that resulted from the war.
Yes, and if I could just make one more point.
Plan A.
Iran has never had this kind of control over the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, the situation as it existed
always
for
testing
many years is that the entire world is...
Damn right, girl. Gotta keep you on your toes.
Had free passage to the Strait of Hormuz, except to an extent Iran because of all the sanctions against it. And now the situation has been completely overturned, and I suspect Iran now has concluded that it has something that is more significant, more powerful, and more valuable than even a nuclear weapons arsenal, which is something it may end up developing anyway if these negotiations don't result in an agreement.
Yeah. It was, I wondered how, well, you say we can't really attribute rationality to Washington these days, but it struck me when I saw Trump's sort of infamous tweet, "Open the strait, you fuckers," or "I'll
You
destroy
crazy,
your whole civilization."
You crazy bastards.
It's obviously first sort of
Remember that,
unprecedented
guys?
level of
You fuckers would be funny,
genocide,
actually.
but also just so smacked.
What a
of
cringe. It was so
desperation.
cringe.
Well, that's certainly one interpretation
So cringe.
To give it, and that is how I originally saw it. But now I've come to view it differently because, as you remember, it was only several hours later, on the cusp of the deadline for this civilizational termination, that the Pakistanis came out with their statement that a ceasefire had been agreed between the US and Iran. And although I have no definitive evidence for my understanding of what happened, I suspect it'll be confirmed in a few years or decades, is that the Americans reached out to the Pakistanis. You know, they realized that their war was not going to succeed. They realized that in order to succeed, they would have to commit enormous additional resources to this war, including a significant ground operation. And even then, there were questions about whether the U.S. had those resources and whether, even if it did and committed them, whether it would eventually succeed. Be that as it may, it seems clear that the Americans reached out to the Pakistanis. Pakistanis apparently reached out to the Chinese, who informed the Iranians that, you know, we're going to veto this UN Security Council resolution, and in exchange, we expect you to accept this ceasefire resolution. The Saudis were obviously involved as well, given Pakistan's mutual defense treaty with Saudi Arabia. And so Trump, when he woke up that morning, already knew there was going to be a ceasefire announcement that evening. And again, you know, in order to cover for this, and in order to ensure that no one would believe that this was an act of U.S. weakness, a sign of U.S. failure, he made this genocidal threat. And then a few hours later was able to say, well, it's precisely because of my threat that the Iranians accepted this Pakistani ceasefire, even though I'm absolutely certain it had already been agreed at least the night before.
Just to conclude here, I think there is a danger when we have these discussions of getting into questions of strategy. You know, is Iran negotiating from a position of strength? Does the U.S. have rational goals? And talking about these things as if, you know, almost as if
it's not a board game.
Yeah, as if we are sort of neutral analysts looking at a game of risk, you know. But I want to conclude by asking you about the moral aspects of this war, because I mean, one of the most striking things to me about it has been just the level of depravity. I mean, the war opened with a massacre of school children that dwarfed every school shooting in the United States.
Groggy politely claps.
American way.
But I mean, the language is certainly, I mean, there used to be this sort of gap between how Richard Nixon would talk in public and how he'd talk in private, and now, you know, the kind of bomb the crap out of them thing is very public. But you see things like the Wall Street Journal ran
That's how he used to talk in private, right? Saying, guys, it's like these conservatives, the mask has fallen down to hell, right? They're so mask off that it's like gone down to hell. It's like the long pipeline down to hell mask is off.
Threats to destroy civilian infrastructure
even give
aren't
a
war
fuck anymore.
crimes. I kind of am overwhelmed by just how obvious it is that the United States is the aggressor in this. Could you discuss some of the moral aspects of this?
Yeah, I mean, I would make several points in this respect. The first, of course, is that this is indisputably an unprovoked war of aggression. And if you go back to the Nuremberg trials after World War II, the crime of aggression was in many ways a supreme crime that Nazi criminals were tried for and executed for. Second observation I would make is that it's now very clear, as you and I and many others have been saying all along, that what happens in Gaza is not going to stay in Gaza. And particularly given that this war was supposed to be kind of the final act of Israel's campaign in response to the October 23 attacks from the Gaza Strip and establish its hegemony over the region. Many of the things we're seeing in Iran were normalized in the Gaza Strip during the past 2 years. And it's now, it's not just normalizing threats and destruction of civilian infrastructure and school children, all the rest of it. I mean, sure, you go back a few hundred or maybe a few thousand years, you will find instances of a messenger being sent from one emperor to the other, getting his head lopped off and put in a box and sent back to the person, Yep. But the idea that it's not only legitimate, but desirable to murder, to assassinate negotiators and diplomats because they won't surrender. Well, we're seeing that now being openly discussed in the U.S. and Israeli press, as if this is not only a legitimate military tactic, but that it is not only desirable, but is something that actually should be done and needs to be done if the war is going to be resolved on favorable terms.
Pooped.
So, yeah, morality.
Little kids will do that for you, to you.
It's not just that morality.
Birthday parties will do that. I don't get a birthday, huh, Jersey? God.
Has been tossed out of the window.
Where's my little queen birthday party, huh? Do I get a little tiara? A little crown?
We are seeing a war against the very concept of values itself. And again, this is very much an outgrowth of what was done in the Gaza Strip, what was allowed to be done in the Gaza Strip, what was tolerated in the Gaza Strip, and what people were punished for criticizing in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, you mentioned the U.S. press discussing killing negotiators. In fact, there's a Washington Post piece, a column by one of their conservative columnists,
Typical.
Mark Thiessen. He said explicitly laid out a plan for Trump, and he said, you've got to tell them, agree to our terms, or we'll kill all of your negotiators. Just saying this
perfectly normal. Yeah,
quite openly, as if this is a rational thing to do. I was also struck by, I think it was a year or two ago when Israel boasted publicly. They posted publicly audio that they had an Israeli, I think a Mossad agent or someone had called one of Iran's officials and threatened to murder his whole family.
Yes.
And they posted this online to say, look how hardcore we are. And I just thought, it is extraordinary that we are in a world where that is not something you're covering up. You're tweeting it.
No, this is from the 12-day war in June of last year, where at the outset, Israeli intelligence called all these senior Iranian leaders and said, you either defect and publicly denounce the Iranian government, or we will kill you and your entire family. And what's notable, I think, about these incidents is that this came immediately after all the targets of these phone calls were aware that Israel had just launched an extraordinarily successful elimination.
You'd never believe a party happened this.
Military
Wash your bras, Gus. Oh no, not you too.
Civilian scientists and others, and nevertheless, not a single one responded to these threats.
Well, we always appreciate your sound, calm, thoughtful, and as I say, sane analysis. I highly recommend everyone.
Thank you very much, Nathan.
Or Books website and check out Gaza Apocalypse Genocide Diary, which is forthcoming.
I want to read this.
From Mouin Rabbani. Mouin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure.
All right. Some other news, guys. Canada invented a new way to wash your vegetables and fruits. God damn it, Canada. Don't you have anything better to do?
Most people rinse their fresh fruit with tap water, but UBC researchers have developed a solution that
You can't make this shit up.
can wash away pesticide residue and keep produce fresher longer.
I'm interested in doing this project because I want to extend the shelf life of fresh produce because they are very easy to spoil.
At room temperature, grapes last about a week.
Our solutions, they can keep the grapes for fresh for more than 2 weeks at room temperature.
The solution is made of starch, tannic acid, and iron.
So we have tested apple slice. And
Okay. Wow. I might have to try this. That's why I wanted to watch it, right? It's not really like, woo, the crazy news, or right? But like we were talking about food and being healthy earlier, so we do cover that on the stream too, right? The poll. Check the poll, guys.
the grapes, and we are also working on other types of the fresh produce like strawberry, blueberries.
To test its effectiveness, students use a laser that measures pesticide on the fruit's surface.
Okay.
They found washing with water removes about 40% of that residue, and rinsing with their solution removes nearly 90%.
Our solutions, they can actually interact or bond with the pesticides. So during the washing solutions, they can lift them off from the surface, so they will have a better washing efficiencies.
Our aim is to make the food more safety for people to eat. And I find it's really interesting, and it makes makes our healthier and makes the world better.
There are fruit washes on the market that remove pesticides and others that keep produce fresh, but the researchers believe theirs is the first to do both at a cost of about 3 cents per apple.
We are trying to further reduce the price and make a large batch of the productions, and in the future we hope to commercialize these washing solutions that can help to improve food safety and qualities.
For the students who worked on this first of its kind,
instead of just giving it out to the public, what do? Commercialize it. Fuck you, Canada.
Fruit wash.
I think it's quite exciting to see my product being used by the company.
Yeah, no. Right? Like, ugh. Go get those bags, lady. Get that bag. Hell yeah. I'm all for it, I guess. Not.
Consumer or the industry in real life. I create something useful for people. That would be awesome.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News,
but good.
Vancouver.
Honestly, like, interesting, right? But I wish it would have been made public, right? But, for $3.99 a bottle, you too can have clean vegetables. Order now. Brought to you by the Canadian something official.
Oh boy, that could never be me.
For real. Jesus. God damn it, guys. All right, and then I wanted to also talk about this, the Kennedy Center whistleblower. This was kind of a big deal too.
There's a bombshell.
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
Ruin the food and sell you the cure. Exactly, right? That's what we were just talking about. Like, guys, they would sell you poison and give you the anti-poison that will poison you then 20 years later to sell you the anti-poison, right? Oh my God.
New report out exposing the scope of Donald Trump's destruction and eventual shuttering of the Kennedy Center. after more than half a century as a beacon known the world over.
Still here. Oh, okay, no worries. Get weed.
It took Trump less than a
Smoke
year,
weed
during
every
which
day.
he appointed himself chairman, slapped his name on the
You heard it here, guys. Smoke weed every day.
building right above former President John F. Kennedy's, and then closed it for what he called a, quote, complete rebuilding. But Joseph Palermo, who was hired last year as the Kennedy Center's first visual arts curator, says that what's happened behind the scenes is far worse than that, than what's been public facing. Palermo writes this in The Atlantic, quote, "We suspected it wasn't just because of problems with the physical structure, but also because a year of tumult had left the organization barely able to function artistically and financially. Trump had come in promising that for the Kennedy Center, the best is yet to come. Quote, on the inside, my colleagues and I saw instead cronyism, incompetence, and a series of bizarre moves that would lead to the Kennedy Center going dark. In between, we had seen artist cancellations, shrinking audiences, firings of old staffers, and influxes of new ones, a lot of drama, not just on stage. In one example, Palermo writes, quote, the institution's spending priorities seemed dubious. The roof had been leaking for years, and the willow trees in the River Plaza outside the Grand Foyer were visibly rotting. And yet the high-priority renovations made to
What's
the
up,
building
Divine Misty?
involved adding gold gilding to the chandelier of the presidential box in
Of
the
course.
Opera House. MS Now has reached out to the Kennedy Center with a detailed list of questions. They did not get back to us. I want to bring in the author of that piece we just read from, former visual arts curator at the Kennedy Center, Joseph Palermo. Amanda and Angelo are still with us. Joseph, tell us what happened.
Oh, where to begin, Ms. Wallace? Thank you for having me. So I started in June of last summer. I was hired under Rick Grinnell to establish a visual arts program for the Kennedy Center. I was told that he wanted to expand the mandate of the National Cultural Center to include a focus on the visual arts and to give people who come to the Kennedy Center something to see and experience when there isn't a showtime happening at the time that they're there. But it was very shortly after I arrived that I started to notice that things were maybe not quite what I was expecting. I think the first red flag that I noted was around the time of the Les Miserables previews that were occurring last summer. There was one evening where tickets to sit near President Trump in the presidential box and attend a VIP reception with him went for $2 million. That same evening, in that same performance, orchestra-level seats were being sold for $100,000. And other things occurred shortly thereafter that started to make me realize they were using the proximity to President Trump as the self-appointed chairman of the Board of Trustees to sell that access to him under the guise of fundraising. And other things that they were doing entailed selling off the lounges, affixing corporate names and individual donor names to them, which historically had not happened in the 50-plus years that the Kennedy Center has been opened under various succession of leaders. Those lounges were gifted to the United States and the American people by way of the Kennedy Center as a reflection of cultural diplomacy and that legacy that President Kennedy had to cultural diplomacy.
Why did you say yes to working for Rick Grinnell and the Trump administration?
I thought this was going to be, I'm an artist here in D.C. I've been an artist in D.C. for quite some time, and it's a dream, to work at the Kennedy Center and to be asked to build something at the Kennedy Center, especially at a time like this. And, many people that are in my life that I know and love have chosen to boycott the institution, and, they're fleeing it, and I certainly don't begrudge them that personal choice, but for me, I feel like now more than ever is the time that people should step up to buttress these institutions. And, I wanted to try to
buttress
contribute something and try.
I always love that word, right, guys? Buttress. Wonder why.
To help and save the Kennedy Center in some small way by being
I
there.
said it in Beavis's voice.
By coming forward the way that I have been this week, it's still my attempt to try to save the Kennedy Center.
How can the Kennedy Center be saved from the damage they've done to it?
I think, and this is another reason why I'm coming forward, I think that a solution here could be that Congress enacts some sort of firewall to prevent the politicization of the Kennedy Center, our national cultural center, from anyone who comes in, whether that's Trump or another party after him. I think that, this 250th anniversary of America's founding should be the time and opportunity that we use to reaffirm our commitment to free speech and the freedom of creative expression, to have it free from any sort of political interference.
Yosef, do you know where the $2 million went that people had to pay to sit near Donald Trump?
I heard it.
I don't. There was speculation among the staff that there may have been kickbacks to Trump for participating in that.
What is your sense of the role that culture is playing right now in leading the country away from Donald Trump? Bruce Springsteen and all the artists that boycotted performances at the Kennedy Center after Trump slapped his name on it and politicized it.
I, as an artist myself, I do feel like I have to represent free speech, through my being. And I think that a lot of artists feel that same way. And so I think our role in culture and creating culture and driving conversations through culture, we have to take up that mantle, and now more than ever, especially.
I want to bring you in on this, Angelo. I mean, this is, in terms of giving the MAGA movement credit for what it got right, nodding toward culture and creating an incentive structure for culture to align with MAGA has benefited them. Culture seems to also be the first to flee, maybe last on, first off, right? What is your sense of how dramatically that has reversed?
I think of it as a lot like, especially in the stages around like the Kennedy Center and some of these other things, as speed bumps, right? I'm not sure they've done the full reversal, but what they've done is slow it down. And that's really the most important part, especially that first year or so of so many of the things that Trump had done. As you noted, it was a bit of an intentional strategy, the theory being that politics was downstream from culture. And so they needed to focus as much of their efforts on shaping and driving culture or changing it or breaking the parts of it that were oppositional, so that then they could have all the downstream effects, including that political control. And that's the
that room looks so inviting. As an artist, I don't give a fuck about free speech. The fascists will have their newspapers.
Slowing it down so that there's space and for other things to play out. And I think that's actually a really big deal, because if you look across the different sectors, every sector can...
Yeah, and fascist art is a misnomer, right? We all know the most famous fucking Austrian painter.
The law firms, they caved. The education institutions, they caved, right? It didn't matter. The advertising agencies, they caved. Anytime, they went after every major sector.
He didn't even make it into school, guys.
And they all caved immediately or folded.
Fascists only steal.
Most of them did. So all the bull...
That room looks so inviting. Yep, we don't need it. We don't need their shit.
It is actually a really big deal that the individual artists recognized that there was something really significant at play here. And so that's the way I take it. It is a big deal, and it does sort of create that space for breathing room, and then that's how you start to then, as you know, reverse it. But first you got to slow it down. You have to arrest it.
All right. By the way, that game, Josephus, is really good. Because you gotta know when to negotiate. You gotta know when to you gotta know when to fight. You gotta be really diplomatic. Alright. We'll see here. And then we also have this. Oh no. You caught shit. That could have been 50 or more % of the game. You just but I mean, that'd be too boring, right? The poll. Everyone vote. Everyone vote. Bite.
Oh, hell no!
Exactly. That's what I would have said.
Oh, hell no!
Why is it echoing? Jesus. I must be doubling something. Hold on. Let's see. And then we got this here. Where is it? Trying to find it. All right, here we go. Just
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin looking at the latest on Iran. The stakes could not be higher, as the fragile ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran has not yet led to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, the economically vital waterway for economies all over the world.
Wouldn't do it if you paid me.
On
Yeah,
Thursday,
thank you.
President Trump repeated his claim a deal to end the war in Iran is very close and that direct talks with Iran could resume in Islamabad, Pakistan, as soon as this weekend. This comes after a high-level Pakistani delegation visited Tehran on Wednesday, seeking to lay the groundwork for more negotiations. A spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry said he remains skeptical of the United States.
It remains to be seen to what extent the other side is truly serious about the claims they've made regarding diplomacy. It is the Americans who must prove their seriousness, because they have not only failed to adhere to their commitments many times, but have also fundamentally destroyed the negotiating table.
Well, they killed
The
diplomats,
Pentagon,
right?
meanwhile,
The negotiators,
is surging
yeah.
thousands of additional troops to the Middle East, including an additional 6,000 sailors and aviators joining the USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier battle group. During a news briefing at the Pentagon Thursday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directed
they've already killed multiple negotiators trying to settle peace talks or get an agreement, right? It's mostly done on the order of Israel, not this guy in particular, right? They didn't kill him. I'm not saying that, Divine Misty. I'm just saying that this is something that we've been doing for a while now, for the last couple of months, really, and it's not good. This shows really bad faith, right? That you're not even willing to negotiate on good terms, which is like a duh, but.
We are reloading with more power than ever before and better intelligence.
Not you.
And more importantly, better intelligence than ever before as you expose yourself with your movement to our watchful eye. We are locked and loaded on your critical dual-use infrastructure, on your remaining power generation, and on your energy industry. We'd rather not have to do it, but we're ready to go at the command of our president and at the push of a button.
For more on the latest developments in a very pivotal moment for this war, we're joined by Ali Vaez. He's in Geneva, in Switzerland, senior advisor to the president of the International Crisis Group, where he's also the Iran Project Director. He wrote a piece earlier this month for the New York Times headlined, "Trump has lost control of events in Iran." Ali Vaez, thanks for joining us again. Do you feel that way still? What is your understanding of talks again happening in Pakistan, the significance of the Pakistani delegation going to Tehran?
It's great to see you. Yes, I do believe that the reason the president wanted an off-ramp was because he did realize that he had lost control of this war, that he went in with unrealistic expectations, that this would be easy, and in a matter of a few days, the Iranians would fold and would capitulate to his terms. 5 weeks later, he's nowhere closer to Iranian capitulation. That was the case at the beginning of this war. And in fact, now the Iranians even have more leverage in the form of the control over the Strait of Hormuz. My understanding is that the talks in Islamabad didn't really go that well because neither side was willing to make the necessary concessions that are required to reach a compromise, because they both believe that they still have the upper hand. And the Pakistani mediators are now trying to negotiate some sort of a framework.
Which, let's be honest, who's more of a fool for believing that? The U.S. or Iran? Of course the U.S. You launched the war. You did all this stuff. You're playing on their territory, on their home turf, right? Who's the bigger sucker, right? I just almost said fucker, but same thing, right? Who's the bigger sucker?
Memorandum of understanding that would at least outline what are the key areas.
I only had one coffee today, guys. My bad.
To negotiate. So with that, they would be able to extend the ceasefire. That's the objective, which at this point remains a very moderate ambition, I would say.
So can you respond to Pete Hegseth saying the U.S. is locked and loaded, and this back and forth between the President of the United States, President Trump, and the Pope?
Viewer discretion is advised. New follower to the commune. Thank you, Drusif82.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Drusif. How you been, man? How is your evening so far?
Who's on a trip through Africa, who first said, blessed be the peacemakers, and then said the world is being ravaged by a handful of tyrants. Yet it's held together by a multitude of supportive brothers and sisters.
Well, first of all, it's I don't know what the president expects the Pope to say other than talking about peace and not being a warmonger. I mean, it's really stunning to expect the Pope to say anything other than that. But look, the reality is, yes, the U.S. might be locked and loaded, and the U.S. is sending more troops to the region. And the Iranians are paying attention to what the U.S. does and not what it says. So no doubt that we might be, at some point, returning to a hot war. But the same applies to the Iranians, that they too are locked and loaded, and they too have demonstrated that they have preserved a degree of retaliatory capacity that would be pretty problematic for the United States. And
yeah, we're doing well. Thank you.
They can still,
welcome
in
to the
addition
stream,
to the Strait of Hormuz, shut down Bab el-Mandab, the access to the Red Sea, where Saudi Emirati oil is being exported to Asia. And that would create a major economic shock for the world and for the United States as well. So yes, both sides still have cards to play. Both sides can still inflict pain on one another. But at the end of the day, they will have to go to the negotiating table and compromise. So why not do it now?
So let's talk about the nuclear program. Hegseth said the War Department will ensure Iran never has a nuclear weapon, never. Khamenei, who was assassinated in this joint U.S.-Israeli airstrike at the start of the war, had issued a fatwa forbidding nuclear weapons under Islamic law. However, Iranian officials have openly acknowledged their capacity to build such weapons if they choose. Can you respond to what the back and forth is right now? With President Trump said they are agreeing with the United States. What exactly do you think Iran is agreeing to, and how far will these negotiations, the next round after the first collapse, go?
Look, the Iranians have been saying for years that they don't want nuclear weapons. The former supreme leader had a religious edict, a fatwa against nuclear weapons. In the opening pages of the 2015 nuclear deal, the Iranians committed to not developing a nuclear weapon. So that is not a new thing. Then that's not.
It's because it's all just a giant farce, right? Like, they don't want a ceasefire. It's just the appearance of one.
To President Trump. The question has always been, would the Iranians accept to curb their nuclear activities for a long period of time and subject them to international monitoring? And in return, would the U.S. be willing to provide them with economic incentives and sanctions relief? We had a deal along those lines. The president withdrew from it and now has difficulty getting back into a deal that does the same thing. We're now talking about the administration asking for restrictions on Iran's enrichment program for 20 years. The most important restrictions in the 2015 nuclear deal were for 15 years. So did we go through all of this maximum pressure that really devastated the Iranian middle class?
It's just the JCPOA with extra steps. Yeah, we talked about that, right? They're just like, ultimately, we're going to have to end up in the same fucking, with the JCPOA 2, right? NAFTA 2, NAFTA 3. I mean, like, guys, this is all this guy does is he spins his wheels, right? He creates a problem, proposes a solution, tries to fix the, right? He's just fixing shit that he broke, that were working perfectly fine before. It's like the dumbest thing. Oh my God. It's maddening, guys.
War in less than a year, costing the United States hundreds of billions of dollars.
Exactly. It costs us money. It costs us prestige, right? The little we had left. I would argue left, right? But, a fart is still a fart. And, it costs people lives, more importantly. That's the biggest thing, right? It ages us by about 10 years. Right? But honestly, the most important thing is the lives.
Add just an additional 5 years on restrictions on Iran's nuclear program. It really doesn't make any sense. But again, at the end of the day, if the United States wants Iran to have a peaceful nuclear program, the best solution is a negotiated agreement which would reestablish international monitoring over that program and would basically impose certain restrictions on it. Not completely shut it down, because that would be a humiliating outcome for the Iranians.
Yeah, they're not going to like that, right? What nation state would like to be humiliated? None. They want to keep their dignity, right? And they have, they should. We wouldn't like that if that was us. So why are we saying Iran has to be humiliated? Excuse me?
And
what?
Unfair deals beget unfaithful deal makers. And you definitely don't want that with a country that has already learned how to enrich uranium and has what it takes to develop nuclear weapons if the political will is there.
Mm-hmm. Ali Vaez, in a moment, we're going to go to Beirut, but I wanted to ask you how the 10-day Israel-Lebanon ceasefire will impact the second round of negotiations between Iran and the United States.
Well, that was a necessary condition for the talks to move forward, but it is not sufficient. As I said, it would require the United States to step aside from maximalist demands. It would require the Iranians to also show flexibility in order to reach at least a framework agreement. But without a ceasefire in Lebanon, that would not have been possible. So this is a good development, but it's not enough to reach a deal.
And the significance of the House and the Senate not passing a war powers resolution around Iran as we wrap up?
Well, that clearly demonstrates that this presidency is completely unchecked, and the president can wage wars that are illegal, not just according to international law, but even according to U.S. Constitution, because it doesn't have the consent of Congress. And it's really a pity that Congress cannot assert its authority in a case where American lives are at stake, in addition to the economic costs for American taxpayers.
Ali Vaez, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Senior advisor to the president of the International Crisis Group, where he's also the Iran project director. We'll link to your piece in the New York Times. Headline, Trump has lost control of events in Iran. He's speaking to us from Geneva, Switzerland. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube.
All right. Yeah, so that's just my take on this. This is all... It's not gonna... I don't think it's gonna... We're not gonna see anything yet. All right, I forgot to play GeoGuessr. We gotta finish our round before it ends. Let's see how good we do it this time. The last ones have been kind of hard. Okay. Rue le Quand... This is like French? So let's see. This could be France, Belgium, right? That's what it looks like to me. This can't be Canada, right? There's no way this is Canada. No way this is Canada. Assurances and placements. I'm saying it like the English way. Okay, let's see. This is Bar le Trottier. God, I can't say any words in French. Let's see. Ah, here we go. Oh, think I know where this is. Oh. This looks like northern France. Right? It looks like to me. I don't know where this is. No, wait a second. Yeah, I don't know where this is. I'm not familiar with this province. They speak French, am I right? Let's see. I don't think it's by the water. It looks like it could be southern. Yeah, I'm gonna put... like here, maybe? Okay. Oh, I should have... I knew it, guys. See? I was over here. I just couldn't find it. Les Monts Aunau de Aunay. God. Fucking so douchey, these French people. Normandy. Yeah, I was right. I should have just gone with my gut, guys. I was like, Normandy. It was definitely northern France. Okay. You can tell by the buildings, right? The climate is a little different too. Oh, is this French again? Is this France? Nope. I don't think so. Let's see. Oh no, it is. Wait a second. No, this looks more like Castilian? No, not Castilian. Catalan, right? I'm trying to find something. The Tap. No, I don't think there would be a place called The Tap. Castellera, Ros Comina, Calles. So calle, okay, that means street in French. Yeah. The fuck? I'm so confused right now. Irish? It doesn't look it could be, but Calais is that's French, right? What? Pizza House. Yeah, why is... Oh, you know where this could be? Okay, I see a French... Irish flag. Okay, so maybe there's like a French diaspora here? I don't know. John Gill, yeah, so this is somewhere in Ireland. I'm almost willing to bet. Kind of looks like it. Yep, there's... Coffee Siopa. Okay. I could be wrong here. I was about to say that island in the channel. Guernsey. It could be this. Right? It could be this. Or it could just be Ireland. But Guernsey... Yeah, I'm probably guessing it would be Ireland. But why is there so much... I'm gonna put... I don't know any of the immigrant towns in Ireland, so I don't know a lot about like where I would put it. But let's just put Dublin for now. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Alright. Well, it was a little tricky. You had to think a little harder for that one. But the flags gave it away, right? That's why I was like, it can't be Guernsey. This, I have no idea. Oh, this is Israel. Jesus. Look, because of the flag. Yep, this is definitely Israel. Look. The where in Israel, though, that's the key. I can't read shit, guys. Like, this language means nothing to me. I can't read it.
Give me the money.
Oh!
Give me the money. Okay?
Eon Wagoneer got gifted a sub by Ducky. Thank you so much, Ducky. Appreciate the support. I can't do it without you, Ducky. Or any of you guys. Thank you. Love it. Alright, now where in the hell in Israel is this? Woo!
DQK just dropped a tier 1
DQK.
sub bomb. Everyone take cover.
I'm gonna start calling you that now. DQK. Glocky just called you DQK. So funny. Yeah, I'm guessing it's Israel? I'm almost willing to bet. Yeah, look for the signs. It's just there's nothing in like in any Latin-based language or letters. Everything is in like Hebrew or whatever fucking script this is. I forget. Oh man, there's like nothing. Yeah, like even the side of the trucks, look, not a single word in a Latin-based language or letters that could give it away. Oh, danger of death. Oh, they put that in Latin-based. Oh, here we go. Shalmohamskl Street. Okay, so I'm gonna put up here. It was Israel. Kirat Gat. Wherever the fuck this is. I've never even heard of this. Okay. Just guess Tel Aviv. Yeah, I was gonna guess somewhere, but I was running out of time. Alright, this could be anywhere. No. I already know where this is, guys. Oh. Estancia. Estancia means like farm in, I think, Spanish? Guadapesca? Okay, so I'm guessing. Oof. It means like a estate, right? It's something like that. It's like a ranch or an estate. It's one of those words. Okay. Wow, where is this? It's like in the middle of fuck nowhere. Alright, so I'm guessing it's not tropical, right? It's pretty like... So I'm guessing this is either... Jesus, look at those mountains. This is either Chile, Argentina, or Spain, and that's the problem I have with it. It can be anywhere, any of those so far, right? But the mountains kind of give it away. Those look like maybe the Andes Mountains in like the southern part of Chile, maybe? But like, I'm literally, guys, literally there's only trees, right? And a sign in Spanish. That was all there is. Oh, here's another sign coming up. Let's see. Oh, God. Te en casa Chaquera Cuyen. Okay. Julian. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely South America then. Okay. So I'm willing to bet it is... It's definitely down here somewhere. I'm gonna guess it's on Argentina. I'm willing to bet. Like right over here somewhere. Oh! Look at that! Fuck! That was good. Damn, guys, look at that. 36 miles away. All I had was fucking trees. Yeah, it's okay. The Andes Mountains are very, very distinct, right? They look like that. Also, like, just look at the trees. They're not tropical, which would mean that it's in a more temperate part of the continent, right? That's what kind of gave it away. Also, I don't think Spain has that many like trees, and the Pyrenees are not that big in comparison, right? So like, oh my God, I can't believe I got that one. That's like in the middle of fuck nowhere, right? Look at that. Yeah, look at that. Argentina is the only South American country that has white chevrons with red arrows. I don't even know that, see? Interesting. Good to know. All right. See, this looks a little more tropical to me. All right? You can see the, like, the palm leaves, or what are they called? The Yeah, like this is clearly more towards the tropics here. Coconut, yeah, that's gonna be a tropical fruit, right? Coconut shake. It's in a Latin-based language and it's in English. Okay. Salamat sek kek sola. Okay, I have no idea what language this is. Sekwan Abrahim. Oh, Malaysia. That makes sense. Malaysia's in. Okay, so we're in Malaysia. I mean, Malaysia's not that big, but let's see. It's down here. Is it in Kuala Lumpur? Doesn't look like it to me. Bandar Kuala? Okay, I don't know where that is. Kuala Lumpur is the capital. Okay. Oof. I'm trying not to read the chat, guys. Yeah, so Malaysia. Yeah, it's definitely Malaysia. Kuala Lumpur. Where's Kuala Lumpur? Where the fuck is that? I have no idea. I don't know fucking... okay. Well, let's see. There's Kuala Lumpur, right? Is there another place in the area that would look... It does look like in the middle of nowhere, so I think it's like over here somewhere, right? Alright, let's check it out. Okay. A little further north, but not bad, right, guys? Alright. And, you know, I was like, it looks like Asia because... like the language, right? But I didn't know what language it could be. Makes sense that Malaysia would be like that, but okay, cool. Did pretty good. Gold medal. Look at that. Gold fucking medal. W, guys. What up? All right. What up?
Epic!
Woo! Congrats! You got an epic. That's the 7th one? 8th one now? Do you like the sound effect I put for it? All right. All right, guys. Well, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me on the GusTex broadcast. What a fun stream. Good to see everyone. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm going to go get food. I'm starving. It's already 8 o'clock almost. What should I eat? I don't know. Let's see who we should raid first. Let's raid out to Jason. He's on. And then, yeah. I'll see everyone tomorrow. Don't do anything stupid, Crack and Pill. I'll know. Thanks, Gus and friends. Of course. Thank you guys. Stay tuned for the credits and then we'll raid out.
Funding for the Gustex broadcast is provided in part by supporters on Patreon. Thank you.
What is going on? Why doesn't this work? W stream, thanks girl, appreciate it. What is going on? Why isn't it scrolling through? There you go. Hopefully that fixes it. Sorry guys, we got a new system here. It's not working out too well. Hold on. This? That might be it. No. There it is. Fixed it. That was the problem. Thank you, subscribers. If you're on this list, I love you. Apparently I love myself though. I don't know why I'm on it. I guess because Twitch counts you as a subscriber, right? So stupid. Oh. Stream participants, what up? Huh. Now it's just stuck on that. Weird. Okay. Alright, guys. Stay tuned for the raid. Bye. Wait, that's not him. Is that him? Where's the... Oh, that's why. Forgot his thing has the Rate it up. Bye, guys.